Chapter 1311, Xia Clan Retreats. Chapter 1311, Xia Clan Retreats. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Damn it. Xia Fei Kuai gritted his teeth. He had taken such efforts to activate Saw Light Wheel, but now it seemed like a joke. The small tortoise shell-like thoughts were still proliferating. 50,000, 60,000. Their numbers were increasing rapidly, not only covering the valley, they were even spreading beyond. Among the dense number of small tortoise shells, some were floating in the air while some were leisurely revolving. In the middle was Fang Yuan's divination tortoise transformation, with its huge body that was like an iron hill. I can't let it continue like this. Xia Fei Kuai was feeling an increasing sense of urgency. The speed of growth is too fast. No wonder Wu Yihai set this sparring rule, but Lord Xia Fei Kuai still has abilities yet to be used. The outcome of this battle is not certain yet. Xia Zhuemo thought, looking at Xia Fei Kuai with anticipation. Xia Fei Kuai was already preparing his killer move. Countless Gu worm auras rose and surged outwards. An arrogant look flashed past his eyes as he looked down at the divination tortoise. No matter how numerous, they are only thoughts. What can they do? Take this, 33 heavenly lights. Let me see how many layers of heavenly lights can your thoughts stop. Immortal killer move, 33 heavenly lights. It was one of the trump cards of Xia Fei Kuai and was renowned throughout southern border. Is he using it? Lord Xia Fei Kuai's area of effect method. Xia Zhuemo was inwardly excited. This killer move was quite amazing. Once activated, from Xia Fei Kuai at the center, intense light would shoot out to the surroundings. Under the illumination of the light, all things would receive light path injuries. Intense lights would continue to flicker 33 times, with the illumination range continuing to increase. They were like lights descending from heaven, therefore it was called 33 heavenly lights. At the first flicker, the heavenly light's damage was not high, it could at most only kill some insects. But by the second flicker, its damage would increase and it could destroy plants and flowers. By the third flicker, birds and animals would die when exposed to the light. By the fourth flicker, large trees would be destroyed and boulders would crumble. The fifth flicker, sixth flicker. Like this, the power of the light would continue growing, until it threatened even desolate beasts and ancient desolate beasts. The small tortoise shell thoughts were hard, but they simply could not compare to desolate beasts. They would definitely be destroyed by the 33 heavenly lights. There was no doubt about it. Xia Fei Kuai was taking the easy route by using this move. 33 heavenly lights was actually not practical, because once it was activated, the Gu Immortal had to stop moving. If they budged even a little, the killer move would immediately stop. Xia Fei Kuai would even suffer backlash. Naturally, the level of backlash also had differences. If the killer move was stopped before the 10th flicker, Xia Fei Kuai would suffer light injuries. Stopping in between the 10th to 23rd flicker would inflict medium injuries, and stopping after the 23rd flicker would cause heavy injuries. After the 30th flicker, the backlash would be even stronger, and Xia Fei Kuai might suffer fatal injuries. The stronger the immortal killer move, the greater the danger from the backlash once its activation failed. Soon, the light burst forth. At the first flicker, Fang Yuan's tortoise shell thoughts remained unmoved. Second flicker, the thoughts were still growing and did not seem to stop. Third flicker, the thoughts started shaking. Fourth flicker, some thoughts started to crumble apart by themselves. Fifth flicker, hundreds of thoughts collapsed into nothingness. Xia Zhuemo, who was watching from the side, could not help but smile at this scene. This was only the fifth flicker. The immortal killer move altogether had 33 flickers. But why am I still feeling some unease? Xia Zhuemo pondered. Sixth flicker, 1,000 thoughts were destroyed, the tortoise shells on the periphery started to show signs of collapse. Seventh flicker, time to deal with you. Xia Fei Kuai sneered inwardly. But, right at this moment. Swoosh! 70,000 small tortoise shell thoughts suddenly surged towards Fong Yuan like a tide. More accurately, they entered his mind. The divination tortoise he had transformed into was a wisdom path ancient desolate beast. Its mind was incomparably spacious and holding 70,000 thoughts was nothing to it. What? Xia Fei Kuai was stunned. Xia Zhuemo patted his head as he hatefully exclaimed inwardly, I finally understand what made me uneasy. These small tortoise shells are thoughts in essence. Since they are thoughts, the Gu immortal can store them back inside their mind. As a result, the 78,000 thoughts that filled the valley had completely disappeared and withdrawn into Fong Yuan's mind. Only an enormous divination tortoise was left, quietly lying on the ground. In the air, Xia Fei Kuai's immortal killer move still continued. 7th flicker. 8th flicker. 9th flicker. But there were no thoughts, there was no meaning to these powerful lights. However, the immortal killer move was still in the activation process and could not be carelessly stopped. As such, Xia Fei Kuai could only continue to activate the killer move. 10th flicker, 11th, 12th. It was an extremely awkward situation. After the 33rd flicker, Xia Fei Kuai had spent a large amount of immortal essence, while the divination tortoise hid inside its shell, motionless on the ground. The mountain valley he was inside had now been turned into a flat land. 33 heavenly lights was indeed powerful, it forcefully changed a vast surrounding area into a flat plain. The hills from before were completely gone. This killer move is truly powerful. Fong Yuan did not stint on his praise. While speaking, he stretched out his head, tail and limbs from inside the shell. These parts were not as strong as the tortoise shell, so during the stronger flickers, Fong Yuan hid inside, suffering no injuries. Hearing Fong Yuan's praise, Xia Fei Kuai immediately felt incomparably stifled. Too shameless. Xia Zhuemo gritted his teeth, looking at Fong Yuan hatefully. This was especially the case when he saw over 100,000 small tortoise shell thoughts surge out of Fong Yuan's mind and spread out, surrounding the divination tortoise. The hatred and fury in his eyes deepened by several degrees. How are we supposed to break his defense? The two Gu immortals of Xia clan were pondering over this difficulty. You have used 3 moves. Fong Yuan indifferently reminded. Xia Fei Kuai shouted, then take my following move. As he said so, he turned into a ray of light and pounced forward, attacking the divination tortoise from all directions. Countless tortoise shell thoughts were destroyed as they moved to defend him. But Xia Fei Kuai displayed an expert's demeanor, he moved back and forth around the thoughts, and could not be stopped. Fong Yuan saw that Xia Fei Kuai was serious and going at full force, he withdrew his head, tail and limbs back inside the shell. Xia Fei Kuai was stifled. This Wu Yi Hai was too wretched, leaving behind only the shell for him to target. A gigantic tortoise shell on the ground and countless small tortoise shells in the air, Xia Fei Kuai was increasingly beginning to feel hatred for tortoise shells. The 10th move was over, Xia Fei Kuai's efforts gave no result, while only some slight injury marks had appeared on Fong Yuan's tortoise shell. You win this time. Xia Fei Kuai directly left the scene with this sentence, flying into the sky. Xia Zhuemo, who was left behind, sighed, he had to clear the mess, at least, he had to take away that Gu Master Zhang. 5 years. After 5 years, I will have to come back and find you. Xia Zhuemo also left, feeling somewhat indignant. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1312, Ransacking Frosty Peak. Chapter 1312, Ransacking Frosty Peak. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Xia Clan's Gu immortals lost the spar and left without making a fuss. Fong Yuan stopped his transformation and returned to human form, returning to Frosty Peak. The mortal Gu house at Frosty Peak was taken away, now only a snowy mountain remained with cold air emanating everywhere. Fang Yuan sighed softly. His heart was calm, like a well without a ripple. Victories were not worth him treasuring and bragging. The so-called sense of glory had already left him long ago. For such an easy victory to have happened, it is because I had the advantage. Know yourself and your enemy, and you will never be defeated. The two Xia clan Gu immortals did not know Fang Yuan's strength, they could only estimate it. On the contrary, Fang Yuan knew a lot about them. Whether it be their killer moves, temperament or so on, he was thoroughly aware of them with the information from Wu clan. One could see how important information was in a battle between Gu immortals. In fact, Fang Yuan's spar with the Xia clan Gu immortals was like immortal Yan Huang defeating Wu Yubo. Both won due to better intel. Wu Yubo was powerful, but his trump card killer move was seen through by others. As a result, one careless move and all was lost. Fang Yuan had even more information. He advanced step by step through his layers of planning, finally making the Xia clan Gu immortals retreat. Immortal killer move Vajra Shell is quite effective. But it won't be easy to have such a good result in the future. Xia clan's Gu immortals would definitely compile their experiences and insights to think of a way to restrict or even decipher and counter Vajra Shell. Deciphering and countering was difficult, but creating a restrictive method was often easy. Wu Yi Hai will also become more famous. This divination tortoise transformation and immortal killer move Vajra Shell are quite remarkable. But once I use them a lot of times, there is a high chance someone will find a way to restrict or even nullify it. Actually, the same applies to reverse flow protection seal. After the battle in Northern Plains, it is definitely being analyzed by the 10 great ancient sects, Longevity Heaven, Old Ancestor Shuehu and others. I should be somewhat careful the next time I use it, especially against these people. Fang Yuan was vigilant. Wu Yubo was a clear example to him. It was not easy to create an immortal killer move, but a powerful immortal killer move could not remain stagnant, it needed to be advanced and modified along with time. As such, when others used restrictive measures or even fully resolved your killer move, you could effectively face them. But modifying and advancing an immortal killer move was naturally also a difficult matter. Other than a burst of inspiration, what was truly put to test was the Gu immortal's attainment level. And the best way to raise one's attainment level is through dream realms. Fang Yuan's thoughts could not help but turn towards that giant dream realm again. Because of the widespread emergence of dream realms, there were all kinds of characters emerging one after the other during the 5 regions chaotic war in Fang Yuan's previous life, creating a great era filled with chaos and disorder. Unfortunately, it has not been long since I joined Wu clan. Making a firm request to go to the Super Gu formation would be suspicious. Although the matter of this frosty peak has ended, who knows when I can go back to the giant dream realm. It is better to deal with the matters at hand and otherwise go with the flow. Fang Yuan pondered while landing on Frosty Peak. This mountain peak was abundant in ice path resources, he still had not properly searched it. Fang Yuan had gotten this rare opportunity after chasing away the Xia clan Gu immortals, he naturally would not give it up. Snow filled Frosty Peak and the air was frighteningly cold. In the depths of this accumulated snow dwelled large numbers of insects, including many wild Gu worms, as well as cold-resistant vegetation. They mutually formed a balanced ecology. Frost jades. Fang Yuan soon had harvests. A large number of frost jades appeared in his investigative perception. These frost jades were hidden below the thick snow, below the rocky ground. Frost jades are only a rank 5 Gu material, but they have some frost jade essence inside, which is a rank 6 immortal material. Without any hesitation, Fang Yuan began collecting them. Rumble. The snow splattered everywhere, revealing the bare surface of the rocky ground. Soon, these rocks also flew everywhere and revealed the frost jades hidden in the mountain. These frost jades were white, with some green hue mixed within. They released intense frost energy, but naturally they were harmless to Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan picked up the frost jades in this area. Fang Yuan naturally did not give up the frost jade essence inside, it was just that he did not extract them and they were still inside the center of the giant frost jades. Next, Fang Yuan started searching throughout Frosty Peak. Enormous frost jades were dug out one after the other. The smallest frost jade was already the size of an elephant, while the bigger ones were the size of large ships. Almost every frost jade had frost jade essence inside it. Some frost jade essences were bigger, and there were even 1,000-year frost jade essences, which were rank 7 Gu materials. It was not that no one had discovered these frost jades, but they were intentionally preserved by Wu clan to maintain the foundation of this Frosty Peak. It was these frost jades that formed the foundation of Frosty Peak. Without them, Frosty Peak would not be such a special and remarkable resource point. Fang Yuan took away most of the frost jades. Not only this, he also plundered many wild Gu worms. There was no need to think about immortal Gu. Normally speaking, Frosty Peak could only produce rank 6 immortal Gu once in several hundred years to 1,000 years. If there were really wild immortal Gu, Xia clan's Gu immortals would not have accepted their defeat so easily. The majority of these Gu worms were of ice path. There were also some of earth path and water path. Among the ice path Gu worms, most of them were called cold wave Gu. This type of Gu worm formed groups and would often roam around in Frosty Peak. Thus, a severe wave of cold would spread out from Frosty Peak. This was also the reason for Frosty Peak's name. After he finished plundering, Fang Yuan flew to the air and took a last glance at this Frosty Peak. The picturesque Frosty Peak filled with white snow was now filled with pits of different depths, with rocks and debris filling the area. Not only was the scenery destroyed, the value of resources in Frosty Peak had dropped by over half, and because of the huge deficit, Frosty Peak's foundation was greatly damaged. If I use pulling mountain immortal Gu, I might be able to pull this mountain and store it in my sovereign blessed land. Unfortunately, I can't do that at the moment. My identity is Wu Yi-hai, a Wu clan member. I made huge profits this time by embezzlement. This has already reached the limits of the righteous path's unwritten rules and cannot be continued. If I really pulled the mountain, not to mention exposing my true identity, I definitely cannot justify my actions to Wu clan. Fang Yuan inwardly sighed and did not dwell on this as he flew away rapidly. Soon, his figure disappeared in the clouds. Several days later, Fang Yuan returned to Wu clan's headquarters and met Wu Yong. It is all thanks to you, brother, for protecting Frosty Peak for the clan and deterring those thieves. Wu Yong revealed an appreciative look towards Fang Yuan. You flatter me, it was only a fluke. Fang Yuan replied modestly. Elder Wu Fa, have you evaluated it? My brother's contribution was not a simple one. We should think in the perspective of the bigger picture. Wu Yong turned towards another Wu clan Gu immortal. This Wu clan Gu immortal had an ordinary appearance, but his status was anything but ordinary. He was Wu Yong's trusted aide and was in charge of calculating the rewards and punishments for all the Gu immortals in the clan. Wu Fa spoke with a slight frown. We have already seen Lord Wu Yi-hai's bravery. With this battle, Lord's name will definitely spread throughout southern borders Gu immortal world. But if we talk about rewards, on one hand, Lord Wu Yi-hai has not completely settled this problem and only set a 5-year agreement. On the other hand, Frosty Peak has been viciously plundered, its foundation has been damaged and its value has greatly reduced. Oh! Such a thing happened to Frosty Peak. Wu Yong turned towards Fang Yuan with a surprised look. Fang Yuan sighed. I also did not expect Xia clan's Gu immortals to be such horrible people. Wu Yong frowned slightly. Brother, did you personally see Xia clan's Gu immortals looting Frosty Peak? I did not, it is just my guess. Maybe it was other lone cultivators. Fang Yuan replied with no flaw in his argument. Wu Yong nodded and spoke after a brief silence. Since that is the case, Elder Wu Fa shall make the final decision. Elder Wu Fa calculated for a while before giving a detailed list to Fang Yuan. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1313, Dragon Scale Sea Area. Chapter 1313, Dragon Scale Sea Area. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Fang Yuan took the list and skimmed through it. The list was filled with various kinds of goo materials. Most of them were naturally mortal goo materials, but there were a few immortal materials as well. Fang Yuan was well aware that if he had handed the frost jades, the frost jade essences and so on, the reward would not just be this. Wu Yong and Wu Fei were actually acting now. They were not scheming against Fang Yuan, but giving Fang Yuan a way to resolve this issue peacefully. Fang Yuan had plundered Frosty Peak. Although it did not cross the bottom line, Wu Clan would rather have an intact Frosty Peak. Fang Yuan, however, seemed to not know this and was silent for a while before he replied, I wonder if I can exchange these rewards for immortal goo material, dragon scale soil. Wu Yong was slightly stumped, and looked at Wu Fei. The latter thought briefly and nodded. Returning to his home, Fang Yuan continued to cultivate. This time, he had obtained a lot of frost jades and frost jade essence. Fang Yuan might even be able to build a mini Frosty Peak in mini southern border within his sovereign immortal aperture. But this was not the important point. The important point was the dragon scale soil. This special type of soil was only an ordinary goo material, grainy and tough. If a layer of dragon scale soil was viewed from afar, it would resemble overlapping dragon scales. Dragon scale soil was the soil that dragon-type desolate beasts, ancient desolate dragons, or even immemorial desolate dragons lived on, thus it had the aura of dragons. Fang Yuan had purchased this soil before, because this soil gave his dragonfish greater impulse to propagate. Right now, he did not take the other rewards, instead exchanging them for this goo material because he had the same idea. The rate of time in the sovereign immortal aperture has slowed down by many times. This has led to a huge decrease in the production of resources. I don't have enough immortal essence reserves currently, the same goes for immortal essence stones, but the pressure in this aspect can be relieved if I expand the scale of my resource production. After Fang Yuan thought over it, he set dragonfish as the first resource point to be expanded. Desolate beast dragonfish as well as ordinary dragonfish were always traded in huge numbers in Treasure Yellow Heaven. Dragonfish seemed to be a product of food path, they could be used as supplementary ingredients to feed many goo worms. Not every goo immortal possessed immortal goo. But every superforce would purchase large numbers of dragonfish at set intervals of time. The dragonfish trade was one of the largest markets in Treasure Yellow Heaven. During the following period of time, Fang Yuan would mainly concentrate on creating a sea area. Currently, mini eastern sea of the sovereign immortal aperture was no longer filled with shallow pools and lakes like before. Because Fang Yuan had annexed large numbers of water path immortal apertures, mini eastern sea was filled with raging waves. Although the water level was not deep, it was a boundless aquatic expanse. There were almost no islands, and sea areas themselves were indistinguishable. Fang Yuan's plan was to construct a dragon-scale sea area. A man-made sea area. This was not Fang Yuan's innovation or creation. In fact, there were many goo immortals in Eastern Sea's goo immortal world creating man-made sea areas. On the current ranking list for Eastern Sea's goo immortal world, many famous sea areas were man-made, built step by step. Of course, the naturally formed sea areas still held most of the positions in the ranking. Constructing a sea area artificially was not easy. Fang Yuan spent a large amount of time and energy to lay out the dragon-scale soil, then he constructed a mortal goo formation in that area and used the goo formation's power to isolate this sea area and make it a special sea area. Then, he led his dragonfish group to this sea area. The dragonfish group was indeed more satisfied in this sea area, and there was a lot more mating. However, this was not enough. Next, Fang Yuan started to prepare an immortal killer move, Bountiful Year. This immortal killer move came from He Fan's true inheritance, but as a matter of fact, He Fan did not create it, he had traded for it with a goo immortal great expert named Pill Immortal. He created this immortal killer move, and He Fan had exchanged for it with other resources. This was a quite rare killer move, as it was an immortal killer move that was specially used to manage the immortal aperture and did not have any offensive ability. But its practicality was extremely high. Even He Fan had left words of praise towards this immortal killer move in his true inheritance. Goo worms rose one after the other, a mysterious aura swelled up and gradually thickened. The bountiful year Fang Yuan was using right now had gone through some modifications. The original bountiful year's core immortal Gu was Year Gu, with tens of thousands of supplementary Gu worms. But now, Fang Yuan had obtained a rank 7 immortal Gu, Perseverance, and he ingeniously added Perseverance immortal Gu into the killer move as the first supplementary Gu worm. More than 10 days later, bountiful year was fully activated. A mysterious power spread throughout the whole Dragon Scale Sea area, but its effects would take some time to be seen. Even He Fan required 2 to 3 days of time to activate the original bountiful year. This is already quite long. After I modified it by adding in Perseverance immortal Gu, the time required has become even longer, approaching half a month. Fortunately, the activation succeeded and there was no backlash. Fang Yuan constantly reflected on his experiences. My time path attainment level is still ordinary, I was barely able to add in Perseverance immortal Gu. This is the main reason for the enormous extension of time. The shorter the activation of an immortal killer move, the simpler the process, the higher the probability of the killer move's successful activation. And, as far as Gu immortals were concerned, it was safer. However, Fang Yuan's action had more advantages than disadvantages. With Perseverance immortal Gu's support, the duration of bountiful year's effect had doubled. The original bountiful year could only influence the immortal aperture for a year. But now, a single activation from Fang Yuan could last for 2 years. This had also covertly saved Fang Yuan a portion of Red Date immortal essence. There is still plenty of room for improvement in bountiful year. Adding in Perseverance immortal Gu along with Day immortal Gu could raise bountiful year's effect. But, with my current attainment level in time path, I have reached my limit. Forget it. The matter was settled, this construction was Fang Yuan's first big project. Right now, in Mini Eastern Sea, the first special sea area, Dragon Scale Sea Area, had completely formed. Large numbers of dragonfish lived here, and there were 1 or 2 extremely conspicuous desolate beast dragonfish among the dragonfish group. Bountiful year's effect did not just cover the Dragon Scale Sea Area, it also included a vast range of this sea area's surroundings. According to what was written in He Fan's True Inheritance, the expenditure of immortal essence to activate bountiful year was huge, but for the next year, starting right from the moment of successful activation of the killer move, all of the resources inside the immortal aperture would be produced at a higher rate. However, the result was not like this. Fang Yuan's bountiful year's effect only covered a portion of Mini Eastern Sea. On one hand, this was because Fang Yuan had added Perseverance immortal Gu, which reduced the effective range of the killer move. On the other hand, the sovereign immortal aperture was simply too vast, wanting bountiful year to cover the whole sovereign immortal aperture was no different to a fairy tale. From Dragon Scale Lake to Dragon Scale Sea, this was an enormous leap, and its significance was profound. But after this project, Fang Yuan's immortal essence stones and immortal essence reserves were almost dried up. To be safe, Fang Yuan began to sell all the unnecessary resources in his possession. Like the Frost Jades and Frost Jade essences he had plundered in Frosty Peak, as well as large numbers of Ice Path Mortal Gu. Where there are gains, there are losses. His current management focus was on dragonfish. After selling some resources, Fang Yuan gritted his teeth, he used a portion of the gains to buy many dragonfish from Treasure Yellow Heaven. He placed these dragonfish in Dragon Scale Sea Area. One could say he was staking a lot on this project. No doubt, this had some risks. But if he went at it safely, the efficiency would be lower. Moreover, he was in a safe and stable environment right now, so Fang Yuan chose to be slightly aggressive and took bigger steps. But like this, because his immortal essence reserves had become scarce, Fang Yuan appeared to have his hands tied, not being able to casually cultivate, comprehend, train any immortal killer moves and so on. Days seemed to pass with difficulty. After half a month, the first batch of dragonfish was sold, the situation began to turn for the better. After over a month, Fang Yuan sold the second batch of dragonfish directly to Wu Clan. Who could have thought you would be so proficient in managing dragonfish? Even Wu Yong was slightly surprised. Wu Clan did transactions of dragonfish to begin with, but previously, they had to buy from outside, now, they could be considered internal sales. Besides Wu clan, there were also Qiao clan and some other super forces which had close relations with Wu clan. Fang Yuan's third batch of dragonfish was sold. Because of his identity as Wu Yi Hai and the low price, Fang Yuan's dragonfish smoothly entered the market of southern borders Gu immortal world. After the third batch of dragonfish was sold, Fang Yuan's situation had turned a lot better, his immortal essence reserves were expanding bit by bit. Fang Yuan was out of his financial predicament, and started to continue his cultivation with a brand new stance. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know in the report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 13-14, Purchasing Divine Deer Fruits. Chapter 13-14, Purchasing Divine Deer Fruits. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Southern Border, Wu Clan. In a secret cultivation room, Fang Yuan was floating in the air, his expression solemn. His long hair was fluttering in the air, and all kinds of goo worm auras rose from his body, mixing with each other. The crucial step. Fang Yuan mumbled, his gaze turning sharp. He carefully activated a mortal goo. This was a metal path mortal goo and was only rank 1. Activating just this goo alone naturally had no risks. But the situation now was different. Bam! A muffled sound spread from Fang Yuan's body. Fang Yuan's body shook violently like he had been electrocuted, his expression was pale and a trace of blood flowed out from the corners of his lips. I failed again. He heaved a long sigh. He landed on the ground and held his chest while checking his injuries. Fortunately, I only used a rank 1 mortal goo, these injuries are not much of a problem and there is no need to use man as before. I will recover in a couple of days with the sovereign immortal body's recovery speed. Fang Yuan was attempting to further improve the killer move Vajra Shell. Immortal killer move Vajra Shell used rank 6 Vajra thought as a core. Fang Yuan had relied on this killer move and strategy to defeat Xia clan's Gu immortal, Xia Fei Kuai. After the matter, Fang Yuan had felt this killer move was still not satisfying enough and still had room for improvement. Fang Yuan paid attention to this feeling. He knew his wisdom path and transformation path were both at grandmaster level, such a feeling did not emerge from nowhere and had great value to him. Unfortunately, although I have made some progress over these days, there have been little to no results. It seems my attainment level is still not enough, I can only let it be for now. Fang Yuan let out a sigh. In fact, his speed of progress was extremely remarkable compared to other Gu immortals. In the past, Vicious Lightning Fiend had used up several years to deduce the immortal killer move Lightning Deity. He was not even at 10% of Fang Yuan's current speed. However, it was also a wise choice for Fang Yuan to give up. Because he had a way to rapidly raise his attainment, as long as he raised his attainment levels, he could improve the killer move Vajra Shell at once. After Fang Yuan's transactions of dragonfish, his financial condition had improved, and as such, he had spare energy to try modifying immortal killer moves. Deducing an immortal killer move was actually very resource-consuming. For instance, if the attempt failed, Gu immortal could suffer backlash and be injured. Gu worms would also be destroyed and would need to be replenished. And if immortal Gu were damaged, that would be even more troublesome. But if the attainment level was enough, the killer move could be improved at once, saving large amounts of time, effort, and resources. Fang Yuan's attainment level barely met the requirements of improving Vajra Shell, although he could improve it, he would have to pay quite a heavy price. He thought it over and resolutely gave up on this small project. After resting for a while, Fang Yuan activated his Gu worms and sent his divine sense into Treasure Yellow Heaven. Inside Treasure Yellow Heaven, his divine sense moved nimbly and reached a Gu immortal's will to converse. I will pay 1,300 immortal essence stones for all your divine deer fruits. Fang Yuan spoke. This Gu immortal wills shook its head and said helplessly, the price I quoted is already low. You have already come here 3 times, if you really want to buy, add 200 immortal essence stones and you can take them away. Divine deer fruits were rank 6 immortal material. It was not a rare Gu material, but there were few people who sold it because there was not much demand for it. Fang Yuan, however, needed it to feed Vajra thought immortal Gu. He had obtained Vajra thought immortal Gu and had to solve its feeding problem. Fang Yuan did not reply, instead, he sized up the products. The divine deer fruits in this stall were of good quality. Fang Yuan had strolled several times around Treasure Yellow Heaven and had found the divine deer fruits here were of top quality. The price was also quite reasonable. Thus, he had visited this stall several times. Divine deer fruits were about the size of a baby's fist and did not grow on trees or plants, instead growing on the antlers of a type of deer desolate beast, fruit deer. It was a deer that bore fruit. Fang Yuan had already inquired about the specific name of this desolate beast, and also saw them being sold in Treasure Yellow Heaven. However, even if he bought a batch of them, the number of divine deer fruits they could produce was a question that needed to be explored. Any resource had its own cultivation methods. For instance, Fang Yuan's dragonfish production was not a result of casual attempts, but was from the insights and experiences of Dongfang tribe. This was the accumulation of a super tribe. As a result, Fang Yuan's dragonfish were of the best quality, and the production was also smooth, giving higher profits while requiring slightly lower capital. I should just buy a portion of divine deer fruits for now to deal with the first feeding of Vajra thought immortal Gu. When I have sufficient funds in the future, I can consider how to raise fruit deers and be able to be self-sufficiently provide for Vajra thought immortal Gu. As for whether I can turn this divine deer fruits production into another source of income, that would depend on future opportunities. Fang Yuan pondered while communicating with that Gu immortal will, then, let me check again. But at this time, the Gu immortal will in front of Fang Yuan suddenly shook and spoke. My main body's divine sense has entered, he says he can discuss the price with you. You should talk it out between yourselves. Saying this, the Gu immortals will took a back seat. Fang Yuan was overjoyed. He was waiting for this situation. The Gu immortal who was selling the divine deer fruits had left the divine deer fruits in Treasure Yellow Heaven and also left a will to look after them. But although this will could think and communicate, it had to strictly abide by the bottom line price set by its main body, and this was not negotiable. But now that the Gu immortal's divine sense had come over, Fang Yuan could properly communicate with him about many things. There were many contents up for discussion. I want the divine deer fruits to feed immortal Gu. If we can reach a consensus, this absolutely won't be the last transaction. How about it? I will offer 1,300 immortal essence stones. Fang Yuan started to negotiate. The Gu immortal hesitated. This is our first interaction, how can I believe you based on just empty promises? Forget it, we can reach a deal for 1,400 immortal essence stones. Once we have transacted 3 times like this, the price can be lowered to 1,300. What do you think? Clearly, this Gu immortal was not foolish and was quite astute. Fang Yuan refused. If I had ample funds, I would not be haggling with you like this. How about 1,350? That Gu immortal forced a smile. All right. If not for my urgent need for funds and the fact that these divine deer fruits are selling slowly, I would not have agreed to your price. One gave the money and the other handed the goods. Fang Yuan let out a sigh of relief after the transaction was completed. The feeding problem of Vajra thought immortal Gu was settled for the moment. Now, it was divination tortoise shell immortal Gu's turn. This immortal Gu fed on kelp. Naturally, it was not common kelp, but ancient ink kelp, which was a rank 6 immortal material. This kelp was complete black like ink, and when its skin was torn, it would dye the surrounding water into pitch black ink. Fang Yuan was currently short on funds, so he intended to purchase and store some ancient ink kelps to feed divination tortoise shell immortal Gu. He would consider more in the future. In the aspect of food, day immortal Gu was much more pleasant. Because it fed on the water of the river of time, there was no need to think about obtaining its food. In comparison to divine deer fruits, there were many more sellers of ancient ink kelps in Treasure Yellow Heaven. But Fang Yuan was not able to make a deal with any of them. The issue was the price. But he was not in a hurry, there was still some time left before the next feeding of divination tortoise shell Immortal Gu. Fortunately, Dragon Scale Sea Area's construction is finished. As long as it continues to develop like this, I will have plenty of funds in the future. Next is the construction of coiling thread caves to produce regretful spiders on a large scale. Fang Yuan had considered it, the market for regretful spiders was huge, especially over in Western Desert. Although the demand was not as large as dragonfish, it was still a lot. But for the moment, Fang Yuan was tight on funds and needed some time to accumulate his wealth before he could start this project. According to this situation, I estimate that it will be over a month before I am able to gather the first sum of funds and start on the construction of coiling thread caves. Hopefully, Wu Clan would have stabilized by then and would let me return to the giant dream realm. Wu Yihai's identity restricted Fang Yuan's freedom. Especially under the current situation of Wu Clan, it was not good for him to voice out his intention. Over the course of this month, Wu Yong had led Wu Clan to deal with the problems created by the various super forces. There were losses and gains, Wu Clan's prestige sank, but in truth, there was not much damage to their benefits. Thus, this situation was still continuing. Wu Yong wanted to regain their reputation, while other super forces were not satisfied and wanted to seize some material benefits. The confrontation between righteous path forces was different from the demonic path. Confrontations in the demonic path were fierce and violent, while righteous path confrontations were light like drizzle and often lasted for a long time. Especially when it was a confrontation between super forces with huge assets, it was difficult for them to fight against each other without reservations, they would not fight to the death. Fang Yuan's idle cultivation lifestyle did not last for long. Some days later, he received another task from Wu Yong. Mount Snail. Mountain-moving old monster. Fang Yuan's brows slowly started to furrow. It was not that he did not have the confidence to complete this task, but the current trend of situations was not looking good. Previously, though Fang Yuan had resolved Frosty Peak's matter, he had in fact withheld his strength and methods, obtaining a barely passable result. He had only created an agreement of 5 years and had plundered the resources of Frosty Peak. Although this was an unwritten rule of the righteous path, he had touched the bottom line. This was naturally Fang Yuan's intent, to leave a bad impression on Wu Yong. Higher-ups did not like using such people, and if they sent Fang Yuan away to the Super Gu formation earlier, it would match Fang Yuan's wish. But Wu Clan was indeed short on manpower at present, while its territory was too large. A matter concerning Mount Snail had happened suddenly, Wu Yong had no choice but to use Fang Yuan to deal with this problem. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 13-15, Convincing Old Monster. Chapter 13-15, Convincing Old Monster. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Southern Border. Light rain was drizzling on a range of verdant mountains. Fang Yuan wore a blue robe, and was gazing at these grand rivers and mountains from atop a rock, before his gaze finally settled on a mountain. This mountain was rather special. The mountain peaks beside it were either tall or short, steep or slanted. But this mountain was round in shape. This was Mount Snail. Or it could be considered a snail mountain. It was an immemorial desolate beast. It was an enormous river snail with a tall, tower-like spiral shell drenched with green moss. When it stayed still, its body would hide in the shell, looking like a towering mountain. Right now, it was awake and was slowly moving. Rumble. As it moved, all the surroundings quaked slightly, birds and beasts fled in disorder. Fang Yuan was calmly looking at the movement of this immemorial desolate beast, Mount Snail, from another mountain peak. Its speed was slow. Mount Snail might be an immemorial desolate beast, but its temperament was simple and mild, it was hard to anger it, it could even be said to be harmless. Not only harmless, it also provided benefits. Because Mount Snail's body was full of enslavement path and earth path Dao marks, which created a special environment around it that would spawn many enslavement path and earth path resources. Mount Snail's ownership had all the while been an unsettled issue. Few Gu immortals could control Mount Snail, it was very difficult for even rank 8 enslavement path Gu immortals. Because Mount Snail itself was full of enslavement path Dao marks. There were already 7 known Mount Snails in southern border. Long ago, southern border's super forces had set an agreement, as long as these Mount Snails were not controlled by anyone, that is to say, they were wild Mount Snails, they would be considered as a resource of the clan whose territory it was staying in. This Mount Snail was originally living in Wu clan's territory, naturally it belonged to Wu clan. There was no doubt about this. But now, it was time for the Mount Snail's migration, it was currently leaving Wu clan's territory for other territories. Mount Snail's original location was at the periphery of Wu clan's territory. In fact, during Wu Du Xiu's time, Wu clan had intentionally expanded their territory to include this Mount Snail. Currently, Mount Snail was leaving Wu clan's territory, but the place it was going to did not have other righteous path super forces. This also meant this Mount Snail was going to become wild again. Wu Yong naturally did not want to see such a situation happening, and under the situation where he did not have enough manpower, without other options, he could only assign this task to his younger brother, Wu Yihai. Wu Yihai. I am Qin Jinsheng, I am also called Mountain Moving Old Monster. A Gu immortal flew over from another mountain peak. Fang Yuan gazed at the Gu immortal. This old Gu immortal was adorned in a suit of rocky gray armor, his hair was a mix of black and white, looking messy like straws. He looked slovenly, with the corners of his clothes being in shreds. But the rank 7 aura he gave out was majestic and forceful, especially his eyes which shone with sharp light. Right now, as he looked at Fang Yuan, it was like a senior sizing up a junior. It is me indeed, Wu Yihai, I greet Senior Mountain Moving. Fang Yuan bowed slightly, his greeting had the style of the righteous path. This mountain-moving old monster's title had bold in it, it naturally was because he was an old veteran, an old senior, having lived for over 2,000 years. He had lifespan Gu and also had unique lifespan extension methods. His battle strength was also very high and he was a famous expert among lone immortals, almost at the level of old Treeman Bada and Wu clan's Wu Yubo. Rank 7 Gu immortals like Xia Fei Kuai could not compare to mountain-moving old monster. Thus, when mountain-moving old monster sized up Fang Yuan, he was not humble and treated himself as a senior, even if Fang Yuan came from Wu clan. Considering the time, it was time your Wu clan sent someone as well. Let's sit and talk. Mountain-moving old monster laughed and sat on a rock. Fang Yuan smiled and also sat down. Mountain-moving old monster saw that Fang Yuan had no objection to sitting on a rock and also did not have a high and mighty attitude. His impression of Fang Yuan improved. I almost forgot you were a lone cultivator, although you have joined Wu clan, you don't have the hypocritical attitude of those righteous path members. Fang Yuan slightly shook his head, the righteous path has to act like the righteous path, as for me, I spent most of my time as a secluded cultivator in Eastern Sea, these habits cannot be changed. Ha ha ha. Mountain-moving old monster laughed heartily, I hear you chased away the 2 Gu immortals from Xia clan, but plundered the resources of Frosty Peak. Fang Yuan revealed a surprised expression, Senior, these are groundless rumors, I have never stated that. Mountain-moving old monster laughed loudly, before heaving a deep sigh, the righteous path Gu immortals can't understand you, but I understand. How difficult is it for us lone cultivators to become an immortal? We have to earn every cultivation resource with our own hands. There won't be future opportunities, so we need to grasp the present benefits with all our strength. Who knows what will happen in the future? As for those righteous path Gu immortals, even if they stay in their homes, plenty of resources are provided to them. How could they understand the pain and difficulties we lone cultivators face? Fang Yuan's expression was calm, he did not praise nor did he retort. He knew that mountain-moving old monster's words were absolutely not just to get close to him, but to express his resolve. He, mountain-moving old monster, was a lone cultivator, and the present benefit in front of him was this Mount Snail. His resolve could not be shaken, and the former lone cultivator, Wu-Yi-Hai, should be aware of it. I am clear of your intention, Senior, but I still have to ask you to have some understanding. I have my own difficulties in coming here. Fang Yuan spoke. Mountain-moving old monster snickered. Everyone has their own difficulties. With age and experience, one's words would carry deeper meaning. Everyone has their own difficulties. Not only was it replying to Fang Yuan's words, it also meant he, himself, had his own difficulties, and more importantly, it was also indicating that Wu Clan was currently in a difficult situation. Fang Yuan did not speak anymore. Sometimes, silence was a tactic which could be used in a confrontation between words. Sure enough, mountain-moving old monster could not sit still and handed an information path Mortal Gu to Fang Yuan. Take a look at it. The contents listed in this Mortal Gu had high value. If Fang Yuan obtained them, he could directly construct coiling thread caves. We will cooperate. I will take Mount Snail and you will get these. What do you think? Mountain-moving old monster smiled. He was actually trying to bribe Fang Yuan. But this was not strange. Instead, it fell within Fang Yuan's expectations. Mountain-moving old monster was a lone cultivator, and from his point of view, he naturally did not want to offend the number one righteous path super force, Wu Clan. Despite Wu Clan currently being in a predicament, such a colossal force was not something mountain-moving old monster could threaten by himself. More importantly, if mountain-moving old monster obtained this Mount Snail, he would no longer be a person who could freely move. Mount Snail could not be stored inside an immortal aperture, unless it was completely subdued. Mountain-moving old monster was an Earth Path Gu immortal. He clearly did not have such attainment. Like this, he would become the owner of this Mount Snail, and would have to defend it if someone attacked it in the future. If he offended Wu Clan's Gu immortals would attack in waves. How could he defend against them by himself? Even if he could defend once, what about the second time, the third time? Even if he was able to defend against them all, there would be losses in battle. Would mountain-moving old monster still have time to cultivate if he were to be disturbed repeatedly? As such, there was only one option in front of mountain-moving old monster. That was to negotiate with Wu Clan. Wu Clan did not want to let go of this Mount Snail, but even the large Wu Clan was an organization formed by its clansmen. And so long as it was an organization, it could not be an airtight fortress. There would naturally be chinks in the armor. Wu-Yi-Hai's arrival gave even greater hope to mountain-moving old monster. Senior, you want to use these to exchange for an immemorial desolate beast? Fang Yuan held the information path Mortal Gu and said with a faint smile. The resources inside are very valuable. This Mount Snail might be an immemorial desolate beast, but who can control it? If I become its owner, I will also only be taking the resources produced by it. Naturally, we can talk if you have any conditions. Mountain-moving old monster's eyes glimmered brightly, his attitude turning much warmer. Since Fang Yuan had not directly refused, mountain-moving old monster cheered inwardly and had much higher hope. The contents inside this list needs to be doubled at least. This was Fang Yuan's first condition. Mountain-moving old monster immediately frowned. Mount Snail cannot be yours in name, it will still belong to Wu Clan. This was Fang Yuan's second condition. Mountain-moving old monster's eyes opened wide, his warm expression suddenly changing to that of anger. But in truth, Senior, you will be this mountain's owner, the benefits will mostly go to you, but you need to hand over a portion of the resources to our Wu Clan every year. This was Fang Yuan's third condition. Mountain-moving old monster began to sneer, his expression had turned dark. Wu-Yi-Hai, are you playing with me? Of course not. Fang Yuan had a sober expression. He stood up and looked at mountain-moving old monster's eyes with no fear. Senior, may I ask 3 questions? Mountain-moving old monster barely restrained his anger. Speak. Senior, first, you are a lone person not affiliated with any super force. How could my Wu Clan leave Mount Snail in your hands? It would be alright if it were a super force, but letting a lone cultivator take benefits would negatively affect my Wu clan's prestige. Second, even if you can take possession of this Mount Snail for the moment, how long can you defend it? Even if my Wu clan doesn't interfere with you, what about the other super forces? Third, Senior, do you think that by only bribing me, the whole of Wu clan will simply watch from the sidelines? Mountain-moving old monster fell into silence. After a long while, he sighed and spoke with a hoarse voice, then if we go with your idea, wouldn't I become the guard for your Wu clan's mountain? Fang Yuan smiled lightly, it is just some insignificant reputation. How could everything go perfectly? The conditions I mentioned are actually not excessive, it is because I considered how I was also once a lone cultivator. The question is, do you want face or real benefits? Please consider it properly. Mountain-moving old monster fell into silence. This time, the silence lasted an even longer time, only when the light drizzle gradually stopped, he spoke, alright, we will go according to your idea. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 13-16, Moon Festival. Chapter 13-16, Moon Festival. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. A few days later. Looking at Mount Snail loudly moving away, and mountain-moving old monster standing on top of it with an owner's air, Fang Yuan retracted his gaze and started to leave. Mount Snail's matter had been settled. With Fang Yuan as the representative, Wu clan had reached an agreement with mountain-moving old monster. Mountain-moving old monster obtained most of the benefits of Mount Snail, but this immemorial desolate beast still belonged to Wu clan in name. Wu Yong had assigned Fang Yuan to retain Mount Snail. Fang Yuan had retained it, although it was only a portion, it could be considered as completing the task. Mountain-moving old monster agreed to my conditions because of Wu clan's force behind me. As for Wu Yong, he is currently worn out by dealing with the difficulties created by other super forces. He has no choice but to forcibly acknowledge the resolution of Mount Snail. Wu clan is in a grave situation at present, as Wu Yong's brother, should not idle around outside and must return as quickly as possible. Fang Yuan was thoroughly satisfied with the outcome of this matter. He had an explanation to hand to Wu clan, and more importantly, he had reaped many benefits from this task. He could already begin the construction of coiling thread caves. Because of these resources, Fang Yuan immediately had spare funds to engage in a large-scale expansion of his second major resource. According to the previous development speed, he would have had to wait more than half a year. And in this duration, there could not be any unexpected mishaps, for instance, intense battle would consume a lot of red date immortal essence. The rate of time in Fang Yuan's sovereign immortal aperture was slowed down at present, the amount of red date immortal essence he produced was a lot less than before, and Fang Yuan needed to use immortal essence stones to turn them into red date immortal essence. Now, his immortal essence was no longer green grape immortal essence, 100 immortal essence stones were required to turn into one bead of red date immortal essence. I need to arrange the Gu formation to construct the coiling thread caves. I also need rank 6 immortal material dark soft silk and rank 7 immortal material regret water rocks. With these funds, all this can be completed and it is only a matter of time. The important thing is, when can I return to the dream realm? Wu Yong's attitude is the crucial factor. Fang Yuan thought as he moved forward. Right as he was on his way back, in the headquarters of Wu clan, 2 Gu immortals were currently talking about him, Wu Yi-hai. One was Wu clan's rank 8 Gu immortal, first supreme elder Wu Yong. The other was Wu Yong's trusted aide, Wu Fa. Who could have thought my brother would resolve Mount Snail's matter so quickly? Elder Wu Fa, as per the clan rules, how should we reward him? Wu Yong asked. Wu Fa was silent for a moment. He knew that Wu Yong's question was not superficial, he was asking about his attitude towards Wu Yi-hai. He was testing Wu Fei. Because Wu Yi-hai's identity was special, he and Wu Yong were half-siblings. Wu Fa quickly thought and replied, Lord Wu Yi-hai has a lone cultivator background. One sentence. But Wu Yong laughed heartily. Right, your remark is correct. Yi Hai has a lone cultivator's disposition. Even after returning to the clan, he has not changed and is always thinking of quickly making cash and eyeing up cheap benefits. Wu Fa, however, did not agree. Frosty Peak and Mount Snail are not small benefits. Wu Yong's laughter stopped, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes as he nodded. That is indeed not good. If everyone were to be like this, how would Wu clan continue to exist? But he did not overstep the bottom line and has not left behind any weaknesses that could be exposed. As he said this, Wu Yong sighed and remarked, he has some ability. How could Wu Fa not realize Wu Yong's meaning? Wu Yong naturally could not be pleased at seeing Fang Yuan use the situation to his advantage. But the situation left him no choice. He was lacking manpower and sometimes had no choice but to send Wu Hai to deal with some matters. Fang Yuan had also revealed his ability by handling these two matters. This ability had obtained Wu Yong's acknowledgement, so Wu Yong would still continue to use Fang Yuan. But when the time arrives and Wu clan's situation eases up, Fang Yuan would be cast aside by Wu Yong, to the extent that if Fang Yuan were to leave behind any evidence, Wu Yong would grasp the opportunity and deal a huge blow to Fang Yuan. After all, no higher-up would feel comfortable with someone like Fang Yuan, who sought after personal gains. Fang Yuan successfully returned to Wu clan. He met with Wu Yong and described the whole matter briefly, and obtained a reward from Wu clan once again. Fang Yuan chose to exchange for immortal essence stones. Naturally, this sum of immortal essence stones could not compare to what he had obtained from mountain-moving old monster. It was far too few. Over the following days, Fang Yuan cultivated in peace. The construction of the coiling thread caves was slowly progressing. This was his current focus. Every set interval of time, Fang Yuan would have to place his immortal aperture to absorb heaven and earth qi, stabilizing the sovereign immortal aperture. After all, Reverse Flow River was a secluded domain of heaven and earth. It was extremely taxing on the immortal aperture. This matter was slightly troublesome. Fang Yuan could not directly absorb heaven and earth qi, because the amount he absorbed every time was huge and the interval between them was also short. As such, Fang Yuan had to search for some immortal materials in treasure yellow heaven, disintegrating them into heaven and earth qi to infuse into himself. This no doubt consumed a lot of Fang Yuan's spare energy and finances, but he would rather do this carefully. This was the only way he could stick around long enough and avoid showing any flaws that could let others expose his identity. Days passed by, Fang Yuan started to feel somewhat impatient. The problems on the giant dream realm's end have already settled down. But Wu Yong does not seem to show any signs of letting me return. Looks like what I was worried about happened after all. Sigh. Fang Yuan sighed. In this world, people often had no choice. Wu Yong was busy dealing with difficulties from all sides, doing everything to stabilize the situation. If he let Fang Yuan return, and a problem occurred on the Super Gu formation's end, would he not be creating trouble for himself? Moreover, Wu Yong saw Fang Yuan had some ability and wanted to continue letting him deal with some problems. As for Fang Yuan embezzling resources while doing the tasks, Wu Yong was turning a blind eye to it for now and did not look into it. He did not pursue it, but Fang Yuan wanted him to. Looking at the reason Fang Yuan disguised as Wu Hai and entered Wu clan, wasn't it for the dream realm? It seems I need to make a move. On this day, Fang Yuan left his residence. For the policies of higher-ups, there were countermeasures. Fang Yuan was an old fox, how could he not have a method to respond to this? Around 12 days later, in a pavilion on Yuhua Mountain, several Gu immortals were seated around a stone table. Warm moonlight flowed down like water. Night birds cried out in the lush green hills. Soft wind brushed past, the view was beautiful beyond imagination. Today is Southern Border's yearly moon festival. 1. It is my fortune to enjoy this festival with all our honorable guests. Xiao Si Lu said with a smile. Her voice was beautiful like the soft murmurs of mountain springs, giving a pure feeling. Her appearance was even more beautiful, dressed in a pure white brocade dress, along with her exquisite features, it gave a feeling of a fairy from mortal tales. Being able to receive Fairy Si Lu's invitation to enjoy the Moon Festival together is my, Luo Muzi's, honor. A Gu immortal with the looks of a young man spoke. His smile was glowing with enthusiasm, particularly the gaze he had when looked at Xiao Si Lu, it was scorching hot. Xiao Si Lu was one of the 3 publicly recognized top beauties in Southern Border's Gu immortal world. What stood out even more was her background. Xiao clan, although affiliated with Wu clan, was also a righteous path superforce. Among the 6 Gu immortals present, there were 2 women and 4 men. Other than the one couple, Luo Muzi and Luan Fei were pursuers of Xiao Si Lu. There were many pursuers of Xiao Si Lu, but being able to receive an invitation to this festival from her showed these 2 were not at the same level as the rest. Luo Muzi and Luan Fei were naturally happy, they came rushing over immediately when they received Xiao Si Lu's invitation. But at this moment, Xiao Si Lu spoke to another male Gu immortal. Hi, you said you wanted to integrate yourself into Southern Border. Tonight's Moon Festival is a custom of Southern Border. Southern Border has a lot of mountains, separated from each other, but the Moon Festival is a common custom. Every year, at this time, we will all appreciate the moon. Her eyes were glistening with light, her soft voice and her smiling rosy lips created an extraordinary image. Luo Muzi and Luan Fei immediately frowned, as they rigidly stared at Fang Yuan with eyes that could burst into flames. Xiao Si Lu's differing attitude could be clearly seen by anyone who had eyes. Moreover, the seating arrangement had already put Luo Muzi and Luan Fei in a bad mood. Because on the main seat was Xiao Si Lu and on her right seat was Fang Yuan, while to her left was her best friend, Fairy Tian Lu. As for the other male Gu immortals, their seats were arranged quite far away. Moon Festival. Fang Yuan's expression was indifferent, he asked even though he already knew. Interesting, what do we do besides appreciating the moon? We drink tea, recite poems, and also dissect rocks. Xiao Si Lu explained with a smile. Dissect rocks? Fang Yuan looked puzzled. Xiao Si Lu did not reply, instead she handed a cup of fragrant tea to Fang Yuan. First, please taste my personally brewed tea. Luo Muzi almost stood up at this sight. Luan Fei's eyelids twitched violently, wishing he could be in Fang Yuan's place. Fang Yuan took a light sip of the tea and commented, "This tea is not bad." "Only not bad. This is Fairy Si Lu's renowned willow spiral tea." Luo Muzi almost yelled. "Is there something special that I am unaware of?" Fang Yuan looked at Xiao Si Lu. Xiao Si Lu met Fang Yuan's gaze, before her eyes turned and she laughed softly. Luan Fei's heart started beating faster at the fairy's charming laughter. At this moment, Fairy Tian Lu aptly chirped, "This willow spiral tea, if you lightly shake it, a whirlpool will form on the surface of the tea in the appearance of a willow leaf. You will only get the true extraordinary taste of the tea when you drink it at that time." "Oh. So it was like that?" Fang Yuan shook the cup in his hand, and immediately, there was a change on the surface of the tea. He drank it then, and felt the fragrance overflow in his mouth, giving him a pleasant aftertaste and satisfaction. "Great tea." Fang Yuan praised. "Of course it is a great tea. Fairy Si Lu's personally brewed tea is not something just anyone can get to drink." Luo Muzi sourly said. "To be able to receive your praise, Si Lu's efforts were not wasted. You should know that you need to spend 6 hours to make this tea and you cannot be even the slightest bit careless during the whole process." Fairy Tian Lu said. Luan Fei was extremely moved. "It is truly my lifetime's honor to be able to taste Fairy Si Lu's personally brewed willow spiral tea tonight." Fairy Tian Lu's eyebrows immediately rose. "Who said you can taste the willow spiral tea?" Si Lu took out some time from her busy schedule to make this one cup. Ugh. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1317, Tea Competition. Chapter 1317, Tea Competition. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Xiao Si Lu only made 1 cup of willow spiral tea, which was given to Fang Yuan. Such a brewing method immediately changed the significance of this cup of willow spiral tea. Fang Yuan's expression slightly changed, showing flattered joy on his face, but his mind was tranquil with no ripples. This is truly a pity. No matter how beautiful you are, without eternal life, you will just be a pile of bones in the end. Beauty is superficial, but people cannot stop indulging in it. But this fairy Tian Lu is indeed Xiao Si Lu's best friend, their coordination is remarkable. The only cup of brewed tea was given to Fang Yuan by Fairy Si Lu, Luo Mu Zi and Luan Fei, who were still thinking of tasting the tea, however, obtained such a reply. Their expressions had become quite stiff at this moment. Xiao Si Lu smiled. The willow spiral tea was only a token of goodwill. I have brought bewitching tea for everyone, please have a taste. She waved her silk sleeve, 5 servings of tea appeared on the table. This tea was different from willow spiral tea, it was not in a cup, but in a white porcelain dish. At the center of this dish was a fist-sized dewdrop. This dewdrop was lustrous like a jade, its surface wobbling slightly against the night wind, looking delicate. Bewitching tea is a renowned tea of Qiao clan, to think I could have a taste tonight. Luo Mu Zi gave himself an excuse, but in fact, his gaze was still fixed on that cup in front of Fang Yuan. Luan Fei had already tightly clenched his fists below the table, grinding his teeth as he raised the small porcelain dish and took a sip of the bewitching tea. Good tea! He exclaimed, but his expression was slightly rigid. In fact, bewitching tea was multiple grades higher than willow spiral tea, the latter was only Xiao Si Lu's creation, while the former was Qiao clan's signature tea. A super force's signature tea was naturally more outstanding than the tea created by Xiao Si Lu, a single Gu immortal. However, as far as Luo Mu Zi and Luan Fei were concerned, they would rather give up 100 servings of bewitching tea to drink a serving of willow spiral tea. Bewitching tea is really refreshing and has endless aftertaste. Si Lu, how can I take out my Aurora tea when you brought out this tea? Fairy Tian Lu smiled. Xiao Si Lu, however, was not the slightest bit polite to this best friend of hers. Just don't take it out then, I am already tired of drinking your Aurora tea. Right now, I am anticipating Sheng Lu's Drunken Flowers tea. It is rumored this tea was a creation from his inspiration when he fell in love at first sight with you. I wonder if I might have the opportunity to taste it today. I am ashamed. Sheng Lu rubbed his nose, giving a bitter smile. My Drunken Flowers tea is a crude creation, it is not exquisite enough for today. Fairy Tian Lu also smiled while covering her mouth. Si Lu, you are making things difficult for my darling Lu, this won't do. Only I can drink Drunken Flowers tea, outsiders can stop dreaming about it. Her face showed pride and love as she said this. Gu immortal Sheng Lu, who was beside her, looked lovingly at Fairy Tian Lu, they were already holding their hands below the table. Xiao Si Lu gave a deep sigh. Oh, I wonder when I will meet a person who will create a tea for me. There was a sense of dejectedness in her soft query. At this moment, moonlight shone into the pavilion. A beauty sighing softly under the moonlight was truly a very lovable sight. Luo Mu Zi and Luan Fei felt their bodies heating up, Luo Mu Zi even stood up. Fairy Si Lu, I have a tea which is called 9 Recollecting Fragrances. It is my own creation, Fairy, I would like to offer it to you on this auspicious occasion. Not willing to be left behind, Luan Fei also quipped in, I also have prepared my tea, this is yin yang tea, there is a clear distinction between yin and yang, Fairy, please have a taste. These 2 Gu immortals only offered the tea to Xiao Si Lu, just like Xiao Si Lu had given her willow spiral tea to Fang Yuan. Xiao Si Lu took a sip of both tea, and said with a smile, 9 Recollecting Fragrances is aptly named, the moment the tea enters the mouth, fragrances coil around the tongue. Tasting it carefully, there are actually 9 moments when the fragrances intensify. It is really extraordinary. Huh, fairy, it is not worthy of such praise from you. Luo Muzi laughed heartily, his previous bad mood swept away completely. Xiao Si Lu then said to Luan Fei, Yinyang tea, although it is not a unique creation, I have heard of it before. There are 3 levels to brewing this tea. First level is when yin and yang are obscure. Second layer is when yin and yang are separate. Third level is when yin contains yang, and yang contains yin and yang revolving around each other. Luan Fei, your skill can be seen for being able to achieve the second level of brewing this tea. There are probably less than 10 people who can achieve that in the whole of southern border, worthy of a food path Gu immortal like you. Tea, wine, delicacies, in this world, they were naturally not ordinary. There were countless ways to brew tea. It was not as simple and shallow as putting tea leaves in hot water. Like the tea discussed by the immortals in the pavilion, willow spiral tea, bewitching tea, drunken flowers, 9 recollecting fragrances and yin-yang tea, they were all incomplete Gu recipes. And when these Gu recipes were completed, and the Gu immortal brewed tea at that time, they could refine food path Gu worms. Food path was one of the many cultivation paths, it was just that it had never flourished. Although it was extremely significant and there was a lot of interest in it, unfortunately, because of historical reasons, there were very few food path inheritances left in the world. This Luan Fei's main cultivation is actually food path. Fang Yuan gave Luan Fei a quick glance, feeling slightly surprised inwardly. What is this guy's origin? I have many immortal Gu, if I could obtain his food path inheritance, it might be a huge help to me. Fang Yuan immediately had malicious intent. Even if you had no intention to harm others, they might still want to harm you. Fang Yuan was somewhat moved. His current strength was already among the best below rank 8. When he activated reverse flow protection seal, although his offensive methods were still weaker, he could stand toe-to-toe with Feng Jiu. I need to first check Luan Fei's background and see if I can make a move against him or not. If I can, Wu Yihai's identity must not be implicated. With Wu Yihai's identity, Fang Yuan definitely could not brazenly kill Luan Fei. Because he was a righteous path Gu immortal Gu, and could not adopt demonic path methods. A super force had much more robust strength than a lone immortal, but these forces usually did not lightly offend any Gu immortal. The same went for Wu clan. A super force had huge assets and businesses. If a Gu immortal could not be killed and escaped, they could destroy many resources of the super force and be a huge headache to the super force. Wu Yong had this consideration as well when he accepted Fang Yuan's idea of giving some concessions to mountain-moving old monster in regards to Mount Snail. It is better to probe and determine the value of Luan Fei's inheritance. If it is not high, forget it. If the value is high and I am to make a move, I need to be absolutely careful to not let his soul self-detonate. There was no need to think about immortal Gu, they could not be obtained. But Fang Yuan could kill Luan Fei and capture his soul, to obtain the food path inheritance by soul searching. Fang Yuan had always held food path inheritances in high expectations. Unfortunately, due to a lack of fortuitous encounters, he could do nothing about it. Since there were no fortuitous encounters, then he had to make a move himself and rob others. Fang Yuan did not have any feeling of guilt. Many Gu immortals were particular about not attacking others if others did not attack them. However, Fang Yuan was someone who, even if others did not attack him, would go attack them. I brewed this tea over 7 days and 7 nights, fairy, now being able to receive your praise, it was all worth it. Luan Fei's tone was slightly shaking with excitement. He then looked at Fang Yuan and said with a hint of challenge, I wonder what Tea Lord Wu Yihai is going to show us. He had not even the slightest idea that Fang Yuan was already brewing thoughts of killing him. Eastern Sea is the most plentiful region in terms of resources. Wu Yihai has lived in Eastern Sea for many years, any tea he brings out will definitely surpass others and be the top tea. Luo Muzi sat back and spoke with enthusiasm. Fang Yuan smiled. These two were Xiao Si Lu's pursuers. After realizing Fang Yuan's threat, they had tacitly allied to put Fang Yuan in an awkward situation. They praised Fang Yuan highly, making it difficult for him to refuse their request. Xiao Si Lu slightly frowned. Luo Muzi and Luan Fei's thoughts were slightly devious. If Wu Yihai could not showcase such a tea, the situation would be awkward. Even if he could, his reputation would suffer. The reason? Because this event was hosted by Xiao Si Lu. Xiao Clan's bewitching tea was the main tea, while other Gu immortals' teas were supplementary. The guests should not overshadow the host. This was an unwritten rule of the Moon Festival. Xiao Clan might not care about it, but Wu Yihai's reputation would suffer. The righteous path was very concerned about reputation. Fang Yuan, however, had no hesitation. He directly took out 5 cups of tea and indicated to the others, "Please enjoy." Fairy Tian Lu's eyes brightened. Being the first to pick up a cup, I am very curious as to what Lord Wu Yihai's tea is like. But the first person to drink the tea was not her, but Luan Fei. He looked somewhat hurried. This was the best opportunity to knock down his rival. As a food path Gu immortal, he was proficient in this aspect. How could he not take this opportunity? But with just one sip, he immediately frowned and spat it out. "Shaw, what rotten tea is this? Awful, too awful." Luo Muzi also took a sip before placing the cup down. "This is the most revolting tea I have ever had in my life. It might even be worse than mortal tea." His tone was extremely impolite, with no hint of respect towards a rival. The two had firmly grasped the opportunity to attack Fang Yuan's reputation. Fairy Tian Lu wanted to help mediate the situation, but after drinking it, she gave a helpless smile. "This tea is salty and bitter, it is like seawater." Fang Yuan smiled and unexpectedly admitted, "It is seawater." "What? You actually brought seawater? Are you trying to shame Fairy Si Lu?" Luo Muzi and Luan Fei quickly sent verbal attacks. The smile on Fang Yuan's face disappeared, replaced by solemnness. "I don't like to drink tea. If I had to choose, this seawater would be my tea. You do not understand. I lived the life of a secluded cultivator in Eastern Sea, an orphan with no one to rely on and with calamities and tribulations pressuring me at all times. Every day, I would wake up early and scoop a bowl of salty seawater to drink. This was to remind myself to not slack and continue persevering." The pavilion immediately fell into silence. Xiao Si Lu slowly lifted her cup amidst this silence and took a sip, before slowly putting the cup down. She smiled, her rosy lips and white teeth seemed brighter than the beautiful moonlight. "This is the most special tea I have had in my life, thank you, Yihai. This tea is good, I am truly moved." Luo Muzi and Luan Fei fell into silence seeing that the person they loved had responded like this. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1318, Story of the Moon Festival. Chapter 1318, Story of the Moon Festival. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Are you kidding me? My 9 recollecting fragrances cannot even compare to a cup of seawater. Luo Muzi roared inwardly, while maintaining his calm appearance on the surface. Damn! This Wu Yihai is playing tricks and pulled a fast one. We are offering tea, yet he offers seawater. He is too shameless. Fairy Si Lu even approved of him. This is too infuriating. Veins started to bulge in Luan Fei's clenched fists below the table. Fairy Tian Lu quickly calmed the situation. The moon is high in the sky. Since we have already drunk tea, if there are no poems to accompany this festival, it would not be complete. Fang Yuan pretended to not understand. Are we really going to recite poems? He looked like he had heard it for the first time. Luo Muzi and Luan Fei's eyes immediately brightened. This was another opportunity. Another opportunity to knock down their rival. You managed to get away with it the previous time, duping your way through. This time, I am going to push you down from the limelight. then fiercely step on you a couple times. Luo Muzi's mind was revolving around this thought, but on the surface, he was still wearing a smile and had a graceful demeanor. The same went for Luan Fei, having similar thoughts. However, they did not know what kind of person Fang Yuan was. Competing in poetry. Heavens! This was worse than showing off in front of an expert. Fang Yuan came from Earth. He had a large stockpile of traditional poems in his head, including those renowned works as well as earth-shaking masterpieces. He could easily use one of them and these two would be unable to save face. Yes, we are going to recite poems, there is a story behind this. Xiao Si Lu answered Fang Yuan. Oh. Please explain. Fang Yuan continued to ask. This is a story that has been passed down in southern border, and is also the origin of the Moon Festival. Xiao Si Lu said with eloquence. Once upon a time, at a certain village in southern border, a young man fell in love with an old Gu master's daughter, and this Gu master's daughter also was in love with this mortal youth. The youth mustered up his courage to propose the marriage, but he was met with the old Gu master's rejection. You are only a mortal, while my daughter is a Gu master with a bright future, how could you be worthy of my daughter? Get lost. The young man implored and begged, but the old Gu master sneered, you are daydreaming, thinking I will let my daughter marry you. You, a mere mortal who cannot even brew tea. What use do you have? The youth replied, isn't it just tea? What is so difficult about it? If I brew it, will you marry your daughter to me? The old Gu master felt a headache. He knew his daughter loved this youth deeply, forcefully breaking them up would only make his daughter hate him. If you can make a cup of tea that meets my expectations, I will give you a chance. The youth was joyous and agreed immediately, sir, I will definitely make it. The Gu master daughter was extremely worried when she heard about this, my family is reputed for our famous tea, and you have to make a tea which can satisfy my father. You are only a mortal with no Gu master abilities, how can you brew a good tea? The young man, however, replied, don't worry. Who says mortals cannot brew tea? Let me tell you 3 principles. The first principle, the law of the jungle, big fish eats small fish, and small fish eats shrimps. Saying that, the young man walked to a stream and hooked a big fish, he cut the fish, retrieving a small fish inside, he then cut the small fish, and took out a shrimp from the inside. The second principle, humans need to eat and also need to defecate. The young man then ate the shrimp and pooped out a pile of feces. The third principle, feces can nourish vegetation to grow better. The young man buried his feces under the soil, and sure enough, flowers and plants started to flourish and grow. The young man plucked a kind of flower from among them and soaked it in the stream, the entire small stream turned into tea. The old Gu master could not speak for a long while after he took a sip of this tea. His daughter said, Father, you are not thinking of reneging on your promise, right? Only then did the old Gu master nod reluctantly, boy, you have passed the first test. But it is still impossible for you, a mortal, to marry my daughter. You are too crude and lack talent, you cannot recite poems. The youth scratched his head and spoke worriedly, although I have not recited poems before, I can give it a try. The old Gu master scoffed, you. The youth asked back, why can't I? Boy, reciting poems is not just casually chanting a few phrases. We Gu masters can cause heaven and earth to change by reciting poems, we can make humans dance with joy. Can you do that? The youth said in a low tone, how would I know if I don't give it a try? Alright, then try, don't say I didn't give you a chance. If you fail, then you need to leave and never see my daughter again. The youth had no choice but to agree, he began to pace around, thinking of a poem to recite. But he had never recited a poem before, he had no clue how to start. At this moment, he saw the ants on the ground, he saw the birds and the setting sun outside the window. Suddenly, he patted his head. He began to recite, sparrows fly low and snakes slither around, ants move their homes as it rains down. Southern border had many rainy days, and it was currently springtime as well. The youth had just finished speaking, when light rain began to appear in the sky. The old Gu master's expression changed. The youth continued, "A drop of spring rain resembles a drop of oil, too much of it sends us into turmoil." The rain got heavier and the sky turned dark. The old Gu master's expression was slightly unsightly. The youth grabbed his head and scratched his cheek. Elm trees droop as farming commences, hair falls as seeds scatter. At this point, the youth was stuck, and for the life of him, he could not recite the final line. "I will give you some more time." The old Gu master sneered. The youth's eyes brightened as he pointed at the old Gu master and said, "Lord took away all the grains, our hungry stomachs are all in pain." The old Gu master immediately stomped his foot in anger and stood up, breaking the teacup in his hand. Then, he pointed at the young man and shouted, "A mere mortal dares to be so audacious." But his daughter laughed and clapped. Amazing, this song changed heaven and earth, and even made father dance. The old Gu master was furious at seeing his daughter side with her boyfriend, but was unable to retort. "Good, good, good, consider that you have passed the second test, but there is still the final one. You want to marry my daughter, what about the betrothal gift? Can you take out a betrothal gift that can satisfy me?" The youth lowered his head dejectedly. He lived in a thatched cottage, slept on a straw mat and only had one set of patched clothes. "I will use all my assets as the betrothal gift." The youth spoke in a serious tone. "Let me see them," the old Gu master said. The young man brought the old Gu master to his residence, to that old thatched cottage. He then said, "These are all my assets. This old hut with holes everywhere." The old Gu master pointed with disdain. "This straw mat that is about to break." The old Gu master threw the straw mat. "These rocks used as stools." The old Gu master kicked the rocks and broke them. The youth lowered his head. Every sentence the old Gu master said made the young man's head lower further down. When the old Gu master said his third sentence, the youth's head had almost hung down to his chest. But right at this time, from a rock the old Gu master has kicked open, a beautiful Gu worm that looked like the moon flew out leisurely, shining brightly. The old Gu master was stunned. The youth was also stunned. He had picked up this rock casually from the base of the mountain. The old Gu master's daughter cried out happily, "This Gu worm is definitely enough as the betrothal gift, right?" The old Gu master was unable to retort. He could not say anything, and finally, he could only rub his nose and marry his daughter to this mortal lad. Fang Yuan had already heard of this story before. It was indeed interesting. The story portrayed a conflict between a mortal and a Gu master, and actually ended up with the mortal's victory. The youth had braved through the 3 hurdles, finally getting together with the beauty, who was also a Gu master. The old Gu master had not used strength from start to finish. This did not conform to logic. It, however, showed a lowly mortal's thirst towards a better life, as well as pursuing happiness. Xiao Si Lu narrated the story to Fang Yuan, conveniently explaining the customs of the Moon Festival as well. Why it was that during the Moon Festival, the people in southern border, be they Gu immortals or mortals, would make tea, recite poems and dissect rocks. Naturally, the tea brewing of mortals was done with ordinary tea leaves, and as for dissecting rocks, it was replaced by breaking pebbles as a way of receiving auspicious blessings. This is quite an interesting story. Thank you, Fairy Si Lu, for answering my doubts. Fang Yuan said, politely. Xiao Si Lu smiled. Why are you so polite? You can just call me Si Lu. Ha! Luo Mu Zi's eyes opened wide. Xiao Si Lu's attitude towards Wu Yi was completely different from how she treated the two of them. We have had tea already, now let us recite poems. Luan Fei said, his gaze towards Fang Yuan flashed with some coldness and his tone had also turned somewhat icier. Xiao Si Lu's beautiful eyes turned towards Luan Fei. Luan Fei, you are already eager, I am very interested to listen to your masterpiece. Luan Fei laughed happily, the coldness on his face completely dissipated as he replied, then let me recite my simple work. He stood up and slowly walked outside the pavilion as he recited. Stepping into society as an ignorant youngster. Step by step I walk by myself. But tonight I do not drink alone. Because my dream beauty is here under the moon. Luan Fei, in his blue robe and with fair appearance, recited slowly. The first 2 lines described his cultivation experiences, hinting at his lonely journey. The last 2 lines described the current situation, especially the last line, it was an implicit confession. He had walked out of the pavilion, and after his recital, he returned inside, gazing deeply at Xiao Si Lu. Xiao Si Lu sensed the passion in his eyes and quickly turned around to look at Fang Yuan. However, Fang Yuan neither looked at her nor showed hostility towards Luan Fei, he was just quietly drinking tea. A trace of disappointment flashed past Xiao Si Lu's eyes. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1319, Poem Competition. Chapter 1319, Poem Competition. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Good poem, good poem. Fairy Tian Lu laughed charmingly, especially the last line, my dream beauty is here under the moon, it was truly beautiful. I think it is definitely talking about me, hee hee. She improvised a humorous remark, easing the atmosphere in the pavilion. Luan Fei gave a helpless and bitter smile, sitting down again, please don't mind my crude creation, it is hardly presentable. Luan Fei, you are too modest, I have a poem as well. Luo Muzi said. Oh. We would love to hear it. Xiao Si Lu smiled, looking at Luo Muzi with anticipation. Luo Muzi turned silent for a moment before slowly reciting. Climbed mountains to seek immortality. Danger present in every step. Dust specks float like light. Dark Gu lurk in heart. A dream like golden jade. Thousands of years of loneliness. 5 regions and 9 heavens. Everything is in one breath. The concept and imagination in this poem with 5 words in each line immediately moved the Gu immortals. They carefully savored it. Climbed mountains to seek immortality, referred to a Gu immortal's cultivation. Danger present in every step, Gu immortals needed to deal with calamities and tribulations in their cultivation, devoting all their effort in managing their immortal aperture. It was like climbing a mountain, the higher they reached, the more dangerous it became. Dust specks float like light, the meaning was that time was always passing by, and in the mortal world, dust gathered on people and people were like floating dust. Dark Gu lurk in heart, on the surface, it referred to Gu immortals storing immortal Gu and mortal Gu in their immortal apertures. But the Gu immortals present had deep background in literature, they could already savor the deeper meaning. Dark Gu referred to darkness, setbacks, failures, compromises, disappointments, and other negative feelings. Mortals thought immortals had good lives, but immortals faced difficulties they did not know. Just look at the living beings in the world, who was truly free and unfettered. Gu immortals endured huge pressure in their cultivation, it was unavoidable for them to have negative feelings, even immortal venerables and demon venerables were not an exception. Climbed mountains to seek immortality, danger present in every step. Dust specks float like light, dark Gu lurk in heart. These phrases were brief but contained profound meaning, which when carefully considered, resonated greatly with Gu immortals. The lines after this, a dream like golden jade, thousands of years of loneliness, it referred to gold and jade, all kinds of wealth, being superficial objects and just like dreams. As time passes, love, hatred, and all feelings disappear. It showed how the poet looked indifferently at the changes in the world, that their mind was free from mortal emotions. The final phrase, 5 regions and 9 heavens, everything is in one breath, was filled with vigor and majesty, sweeping away the gloominess and heaviness from the previous lines. There were several other meanings to it, as long as humans had one breath left in them they were living, when they lose this breath, they would die. People strived and fought for that one breath. Using the world as an analogy, Gu immortal cultivation was just like the pillars holding up the 5 regions and 9 heavens, everyone was just working hard to support themselves. The entire poem was slow at first before it became faster in momentum, creating a majestic scene that filled the listeners with admiration. For a moment, the pavilion was filled with silence, the immortals quietly ruminating over this poem. Xiao Lu thought to herself, strange, from my understanding of Luo Muzi, how could he create such a poem with his nature? He probably stole someone else's work, he also did not say it was his creation. She sized up Luo Muzi. Luo Muzi looked calm on the surface, sitting upright as he quietly drank his tea, but the smile on his lips gave away his inner feelings. Xiao Lu inwardly smiled, but did not expose him. She then turned her sight towards Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan's expression was unexpectedly strange. This is Qi Ju's 5 words poem. How is it possible? Didn't demon immortal Qi Ju's grotto heaven only appear when dream realms flourished in the 5 regions' chaotic war? Strange. 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 Demon immortal Qi Ju was a great expert from the olden antiquity era, a rank 8 Gu immortal with immense battle strength who had once fought limitless demon venerable 3 times. The results were a win, a draw, and a loss. Naturally, the first 2 battles were when limitless demon venerable had yet to advance to rank 9. And, in the final battle, limitless demon venerable had advanced to rank 9, surpassing demon immortal Qi Ju. But the battle had still lasted for 9 days and 9 nights, before the latter was defeated. However, limitless demon venerable did not kill demon immortal Qi Ju and let him go. Limitless demon venerable had said this at the time, you were my biggest enemy, but without you, I would not have trained so desperately. You also had a hand in pushing me towards my current cultivation level. Having received the recognition and praise of a grand demon venerable, demon immortal Qi Ju's name was marked in history. The grotto heaven left after his death had lasted until the present. In Fang Yuan's first life, dream realms manifested one after another during the 5 regions' chaotic war, regional walls disappeared and the 5 regions turned into one. Such a huge change created a turbulence in heaven and earth Qi, exposing many hidden blessed lands and grotto heavens to the outside world. Demon immortal Qi Ju's grotto heaven was revealed in such a situation. Undoubtedly, the moment it appeared, it caused an uproar in the 5 regions. That shouldn't be. Simple logic is that Qi Ju's 5 words poem was engraved in Qi Ju grotto heaven. How did Luo Muzi know of it at this time? Could it be, he has already entered Qi Ju grotto heaven? Fang Yuan's thoughts became somewhat chaotic for a moment. Qi Ju grotto heaven contained the demon immortal's true inheritance. This demon immortal was on the same level as sword immortal Bo Qing, even He Fan paled in comparison to him. If I could obtain this true inheritance. Will I obtain Qi Ju's true inheritance by killing this Luo Muzi? Intense killing intent rose in Fang Yuan's mind once again. Without knowing Fang Yuan's thoughts, Luo Muzi gave a challenging glance to Fang Yuan. I wonder what great work Wu Yihai has. We are really looking forward to it. That is natural. Luan Fei quickly chipped in, Lord Wu Yihai's origin is not ordinary, he has plenty of experiences and what's more, Eastern Sea is very rich in resources. I can't compare to the scholarly attainment of Wu Yihai. These two praised Fang Yuan with pleasant words, but their thoughts were anything but good. Xiao Lu was well aware of it. At this moment, she did not protect Fang Yuan but stared at Fang Yuan and encouraged him, I also really want to listen to your poem, I am sure it will definitely be interesting and special. Yes, yes. Fairy Tian Lu quickly agreed. For a moment, Fang Yuan was pressured by everyone, he rubbed his nose and gave a forced smile, friends, you are all overestimating me, how could I have poems, I don't know how to make any. Wu Yihai, you are modest. Too modest. Luo Muzi laughed. Fang Yuan shrugged, I am telling the truth, I did not even know we would have to recite poems to appreciate the moon. Since that is the case, Wu Yihai, why don't you make one right now, it should be a wonderful work, don't worry if it takes a bit of time, we are all willing to wait. Luan Fei said, not letting Fang Yuan off. Fang Yuan heaved a deep sigh. Of course, he had a lot of poems in his head. There was many poems praised since ancient times from Earth. He could casually copy any of those famous stanzas, it would be enough for this occasion and resolve the difficulties from these Gu immortals. But so what? Fang Yuan gazed around. Luo Muzi and Luan Fei loved Xiao Si Lu, they naturally considered Fang Yuan an eyesore, both had come to a tacit agreement to work together and knock down their rival. What good would it do for him to contend with such losers? Fairy Tian Lu was Xiao Si Lu's best friend and was indeed working hard, helping Xiao Si Lu wholeheartedly. As for her lover, he did not speak much and was silent most of the time, quietly drinking tea from the side. This showed how astute he was. As for Xiao Si Lu, this fairy had both appearance and background, and was one of the three great beauties of southern border. She naturally had her pride. Xiao Clan might have ordered her to approach Fang Yuan, but she had her own methods. She had thought meticulously in hosting this moon festival today. She had thought out everything, not only taking care of small details like seating order, she had also brought her best friend to help her, and an even more brilliant move was that she had invited Luan Fei and Luo Muzi to take part in the event. When two men compete with each other over a girl, even if she was a pig, they would think she is awesome. Only when one wins and the other is out of the competition, and when the victor looks at this pig, he will then realize, oh, this was a pig after all. This was rather exaggerated, but the logic was similar. When a competitor appears, it would make the girl who is being pursued seem even more precious and more valuable. Xiao Si Lu was well aware of this logic, so she made this arrangement to evoke Fang Yuan's thoughts and make him take the initiative to pursue her, then she could conveniently agree and hook Fang Yuan in. If it were the real Wu Yi, perhaps he might have already fallen into the planning of beauty. Unfortunately, the one she was facing was Fang Yuan. Fang Yuan remained unmoved the whole time because he knew the relation between Wu clan and Xiao clan, and also the scheme of Xiao clan's higher-ups. With this understanding, Fang Yuan was in a strategically superior and stable position, while Luo Muzi and Luan Fei were no more than roadside clowns. When Fang Yuan sized up the Gu immortals in the pavilion, the Gu immortals were also focusing their gazes on him. There was silence in the pavilion. This silence was no doubt a kind of pressure. Luo Muzi and Luan Fei want to embarrass me. Xiao Si Lu also wants me to accept the challenge. Maybe she is feeling a little upset. After all, for such a beauty, the seawater was too rude. As for Fairy Tian Lu, she is completely on Xiao Si Lu's side, and is nothing to worry about. Fang Yuan thought of all this, smiling inwardly as he said, then let me recite one, don't laugh at me. We are all ears. We are looking forward to it. Luo Muzi and Luan Fei were all smiles. At the next moment, the immortals heard Fang Yuan's poem. O great sea, you are made of water. O horse, you have 4 legs. O beauty, you have large eyes and a mouth. The poem ended. The entire pavilion was silent. Everyone's expression seemed to have stiffened. Even Xiao Si Lu and Fairy Tian Lu were no exception. This, what the F***ck? This is a poem. This is rubbish. This Wu Yi is an utter bore. What nonsense is this? Appreciating the moon and reciting poems, it was an elegant event, now it is completely ruined. The Gu immortals were unanimously screaming internally. Fang Yuan was all smiles as he looked at Xiao Si Lu. I wonder if Fairy Si Lu is satisfied? Satisfied? Screw you. You still have the nerves to ask this question. You are simply too outrageous. Luo Muzi and Luan Fei roared inwardly, but being mindful of their bearing, they showed nothing on the surface. The pavilion was still a scene of silence. Heh, hee hee. Xiao Si Lu laughed, even though it sounded very forced. This poem is really special, to tell the truth. I have never heard such a poem. It is indeed worthy of being your creation. Now that I carefully consider it, it is actually quite funny. Luo Mu Zi. Luan Fei. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1320, please evaluate. Chapter 1320, please evaluate. Translator. Atlas Studios. Editor. Atlas Studios. Luo Mu Zi and Luan Fei were utterly speechless. They wanted to criticize Fang Yuan, but Xiao Lu had made such a remark. If they criticized now, would they not be embarrassing Xiao Lu? Luo Mu Zi and Luan Fei felt like they had swallowed a housefly but were unable to spit it out. It was unbearable. Fang Yuan was laughing on the inside as he gazed around. Xiao Lu was forcefully maintaining her smile, while Fairy Tian Lu gazed at her concernedly, her gaze seemingly containing some sympathetic feeling. As Xiao Lu's best friend, how could Fairy Tian Lu not know of her intention? It was just that Fang Yuan did not take the bait at all, making them be unable to do anything. As for Luo Mu Zi and Luan Fei, they had such stiff expressions that it was quite funny. Fang Yuan looked at these two. How was it? My poem was not bad, right? Not bad. Luo Mu Zi's and Luan Fei's eyes immediately opened wide as they looked at Fang Yuan, seemingly wanting to see how shameless this person could possibly get. But immediately afterwards, they heard Fang Yuan speak. Although I had a flash of inspiration, it seems a true masterpiece poem is also created like this. Lu really approves of my poem, but I still would like to hear your constructive feedback. Constructive feedback. This dog's hit thing can be considered a poem. You want feedback? Lu, why are you speaking of her so closely? You scumbag, hey! Who let you address her so intimately? Luo Mu Zi and Luan Fei were madly raving inside their minds. But they could not lose their temper. They had to evaluate it and give good remarks just like Xiao Lu's words so that they would not embarrass her. This disgusted them even more than eating a housefly. Fang Yuan was clearly their rival in love and it was also garbage that could not be considered a poem, but Luo Mu Zi and Luan Fei still needed to evaluate it and give nice comments. This poem, it is clear, easy to understand, and easy to read. Luo Mu Zi stammered, his expression was becoming increasingly unsightly and he felt like he was going to vomit. Fang Yuan nodded with a smile, then turned towards Luan Fei. What do you think? Luan Fei saw Fang Yuan staring at him, the corners of his lips were raised slightly in a smile and seemed to be twitching. He insipidly remarked, "This is a good poem." Fang Yuan's eyebrows rose. How could he let this person off so easily? He pursued, "What is so good about it?" Luan Fei was furious, his face flushed red with anger as he screamed internally, "How would I know what's good about it? There is nothing good about it. You created this garbage and still want to be praised. You scumbag." Looking at Fang Yuan's smiling expression, Luan Fei had an intense urge to smash the teacup on Fang Yuan's face. It would really appease his anger. But he could not do that. Xiao Lu was right beside them. If Luan Fei did that, what would happen to Xiao Lu's face? Wouldn't he embarrass this fairy? Moreover, he was not like Luo Mu Zi, he was a lone immortal. By contrast, Wu Yihai had a noble status, he was in Wu clan, and was the younger brother of Wu Yong. Luan Fei could only restrain his anger as he racked his brains to think of words for evaluating Fang Yuan's poem. I am really pleased with this Moon Appreciation Festival. Never had I thought I am talented in composing poems. Fang Yuan smiled at Xiao Lu, his gaze full of deep meaning. Xiao Lu's mind shook slightly as she smiled. Next is rock dissecting, maybe you will have a huge harvest. Indeed, indeed. I am also most expectant towards this event. Let us dissect rocks. Fairy Tian Lu quickly helped to change the subject. I have prepared a huge amount of rocks here for everyone to choose. Please. Xiao Lu naturally had come prepared, with Xiao clan as her background. Gathering some rocks was of course not a troubling matter. The mood in the pavilion eased. Luo Muzi and Luan Fei also let out sighs of relief, at least they no longer needed to praise Fang Yuan's poem against their own will. The rocks prepared by Xiao Si Lu were of all sizes. The Gu immortals chose them one after the other and dissected them on the spot to see if there were any Gu worms inside. As far as mortal Gu was concerned, it was very easy for Gu immortals to get them. As such, the atmosphere was relaxed, unlike the seriousness when Gu masters dissected rocks. Naturally, this only applied to mortal Gu. If immortal Gu were involved, this rock dissecting activity would be given serious attention by Gu immortals. Gu immortals had a lot of methods to check whether a rock had mortal Gu or not. However, in today's event, they naturally would not use their methods to cheat and only relied on their insight and luck. As for rocks that had immortal Gu, they could only be found by chance and not through seeking. The investigative methods of Gu immortals were deficient and without options in regard to such rocks. Trying to get an immortal Gu in tonight's event would be wishful thinking and unrealistic. No one present had such expectations, as this was only meant to be an entertaining event. It was just that this entertainment held different meaning to Luo Muzi and Luan Fei compared to the past. They were secretly contending with Fang Yuan, but the result was they were almost at the verge of coughing out blood. Fang Yuan's rock dissecting results had maintained first place from start to finish. Rock dissecting relied on the Gu master's discerning eye. Fang Yuan naturally did not lack in this aspect. He had even started his own rock gambling den in his first life. As for luck, was Fang Yuan's luck bad? Not to mention he had connected his luck with several other lucky people. He himself had dogs hit luck immortal Gu to help him. However, although Fang Yuan obtained victory, it was a rather close one. He maintained superiority from the start, but this superiority was not obvious at times. The one who exerted such strong pressure on him was Luo Muzi. This person was not a lone immortal, he came from one of Southern Border's super forces, Luo clan. His insight was very sharp, and most importantly, his luck was quite good. His results were only slightly inferior to Fang Yuan. Looks like his luck is quite good. Otherwise, he would not have known about Qi Ju's 5 words poem, isn't that right? Fang Yuan thought to himself. It would not be troubling for him to make a move against Luan Fei, but to target Luo Muzi, he had to worry about Luo clan. Naturally, no matter what he decided to do, Wu Yihai's identity absolutely could not be implicated. By the time the Moon Appreciation Festival ended, it was already deep into the night. Everyone bid their farewells one after the other. The scene was quite lively. I will see you off. Xiao Si Lu took the initiative to see Fang Yuan off. Luo Muzi's and Luan Fei's eyes flushed red. Let's go. Luo Muzi and Luan Fei were originally competitors and found one another an eyesore, but through the course of tonight's event, they had instead reached a tacit agreement. The 4 Gu immortals left the pavilion successively, leaving behind Fairy Tian Lu and her lover. Sigh. Fairy Tian Lu sighed. Tonight's Moon Appreciation Festival was so tiring. Nothing to be done about it. Her lover also sighed, his gaze clear and bright. Both held each other's hands and smiled as they stepped on the clouds and left. This Wu Yihai is a complete boor. What in the world did he compose? Can that thing even be called a poem? Luo Muzi was burning with rage. But Fairy Si Lu actually has a completely different view of him. Luan Fei gritted his teeth. Humph, what different view? His greatest worth is his identity. Luo Muzi said in a slightly envious tone. Luan Fei's expression was malevolent. I cannot take this lying down, I cannot let Wu Yihai continue living so happily. On their way, Luo Muzi and Luan Fei conversed heatedly. Oh. What idea do you have? Wu clan might be facing difficulties from all sides and they might lack the initiative, but they still have the ability to maintain their status. If you want to make a move against Wu Yihai, you will have to consider Wu clan. Whether it be publicly or privately, Wu Yong will stand behind Wu Yihai. We need to take this relationship properly into account. Luo Muzi spoke. He was a righteous path Gu immortal and was aware of the difficulty here. If they overestimated their relationship, they would not be able to cause any harm to Wu Yihai. But if they underestimated it, who would be able to bear Wu clan's retribution? Luan Fei curled his lips as he thought, righteous path Gu immortals have to worry about everything. On the other hand, the demonic path can directly take action. However, Luan Fei was not a demonic cultivator, he was a lone cultivator who was more inclined towards the righteous path. Luan Fei sneered as a sinister light flashed in his eyes, we don't need to personally make a move. Fairy Si Lu has a lot of pursuers, not just us two. We can inform that person, he will definitely be furious because Fairy Si Lu did not invite him this time. You are talking about that guy from Qi clan? Luo Muzi's expression became slightly complex. That Gu immortal from Qi clan was the biggest pursuer of Xiao Si Lu. Before tonight, Luo Muzi greatly loathed him. But now, he was about to make use of his strength to teach a lesson to Wu Yihai. Although Wu Yihai won against Xia Fei Kuai, it was because he relied on his knowledge of the enemy. If he was strong, why would he have to discuss any conditions with that mountain-moving old monster? He could have directly seized back Mount Snail. That guy from Qi clan is definitely stronger than Wu Yihai, moreover, he hates it when others have any desire towards Fairy Si Lu. Luan Fei continued. Luo Muzi's gaze became resolute, alright, we will inform Qi Shang of today's matter. Xiao Si Lu accompanied Fang Yuan for a distance before she bid a reluctant farewell to Fang Yuan. But she did not directly return to Qiao clan's headquarters, instead returning to the pavilion. Inside the pavilion, there was a Gu immortal sitting on a rock chair and quietly drinking bewitching tea. This person was Qiao clan's first supreme elder. The crucial character who had helped Fang Yuan return to Wu clan previously. Qiao clan's first supreme elder slowly put down the teacup, although Wu Yihai grew up in Eastern Sea, he is after all Wu Duxiu's son. So what do you think? Xiao Si Lu's gaze was slightly dim as she softly said, I agree. Fang Yuan targeted Luo Muzi and Luan Fei, forcing them to say his poem was good, but in fact it was an indirect attack on Xiao Si Lu. Xiao Si Lu was well aware that this was the way of a righteous path confrontation, it was all smiles and jovial on the surface, but was actually a maelstrom of dark undercurrents. Qiao clan's first supreme elder sighed, our Qiao clan has all along been allies with Wu clan, but we have never been able to penetrate deep into their core. For the sake of Qiao clan, Wu Yihai is a huge opportunity, do you understand? Xiao Si Lu bit her lips, her gaze containing reluctance, but she still nodded in the end, I understand. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know, report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible.